Melissa's got to give us the heads up for the stream.
Okay, you're live now.
Oh, thank you.
Okay, great. Well, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the September 15 meeting of the NVTC Program Advisory Committee. I'd like to note that we're starting the meeting at about 5:01 p.m. NVT staff followed the procedures and guidelines to give notice to working group members, both commission staff and the public about this meeting today. Today's meeting is an all virtual public meeting as permitted under the Virginia Freedom of Information Act and NVTC's electronic participation policy. The meeting is being streamed live via NVTC's YouTube account. If the live stream transmission fails, we would ask anyone watching to email support@novatransit.org. NVTC staff are monitoring this account throughout the meeting. I will now ask Alan Fye, NVTC's Director of Program and Policy, to call the roll to identify commissioners and NVTC staff present on this call.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chair. Please respond here when you hear your name. Chair Snyder.
Here.
Ms. Bagley.
Here.
Ms. Garvey. Mr. Meyer.
Here.
Mr. Faust.
Here.
Mr. Turner.
Here.
All right, we have a quorum. The staff that are participating on the call today are NVTC Executive Director Kate Mattice, Director of Programs and Policy Alan Fye, Program Manager for Commuter Choice Ben Owen, Program Analyst from Commuter Choice Adam Hager, Transit Resource Center Program Manager Xavier Harmony, and our IT and Web Resource Manager Melissa Walker. Back to you, Mr. Chair.
Thanks a lot for everyone taking time out of their very, very busy schedule. So appreciate you spending some time with us this afternoon. So the first action item on the agenda is the summary of the April 14 meeting of our committee. Does anyone have any comments or edits to share with the staff? Okay, hearing none. Next item on the agenda, we have a few program updates on our agenda this afternoon. We'll begin with Commuter Choice. Staff are proposing minor changes to the technical evaluation process that would take effect this fall when the next call for projects opens in the I-395-95 corridor, and welcome the committee's feedback today. We'll also receive update today on NVTC-led strategic planning efforts for the Envision Route 7 bus rapid transit project and deployment of zero-emission buses by Northern Virginia's transit operators. I'll ask Ben Owen to kick us off with the, kick the subject off, not us, with the Commuter Choice part of today's presentation. Ben?
Great, thank you, Mr. Chair. I will be fairly brief this afternoon. Next slide, good. So, as we do each summer, the Commuter Choice team has reviewed our program policy in light of our experience in the most recent call for projects. Our last one was in the I-66 corridor with the program adopted in June for fiscal years 23 and 24. We're looking, we look each summer at any changes we might make to improve our administration of the program. This year, we're eyeing one change of relatively modest impact, an update to our technical evaluation process, which we last revisited in 2019. The current process is shown here. Most of the possible points in it come from technical factors that relate to the program's improvement goals. So any projects that we support under Commuter Choice need to support corridor goals of moving more people and basically implementing viable and effective multimodal transportation improvements. So the single most important factor in the process is person throughput, and we're looking here at efficiency, by which a proposed project would move more people through the corridor in terms of people relative to the number of vehicle trips associated with moving those people. Under technical merit, we also look at travel time savings, connections between modes of transportation and regional activity centers, and the ability of a project to absorb potential car trips that might be shifted onto parallel roads due to congestion or tolling. Other factors in our process are cost effectiveness, where we look at the technical merit score relative to the funding request, taking also the useful life of the project into account. So capital projects can do better here under this criterion. Then we have applicant preference, where each applicant can pick their top priority of the ones they're submitting and receive 10 points for it. And the last is interagency collaboration. Basically, we've looked to incentivize discussions with other jurisdictions or transportation agencies about project proposals, independent of cases where coordination might be necessary for successful implementation of the project. It is a fairly familiar process to our applicants at this point, so we're not considering wholesale changes to it. I think you may have just gotten a sneak peek at it, but Melissa, please advance the slide. So this is what we're proposing. And the idea here is to emphasize the measurable aspects of the process and incorporate regional interest and equity into it. The points allocated to each criterion would change as follows. A technical merit would go up from 70 to 75 total points, comprising the same 5 factors and weights. I'll talk about changes to the accessibility factor that we're proposing in a moment here. Annualized cost effectiveness would increase from 15 to 20 points. Applicant preference would decrease from 10 to 5 points. And we would get rid of the interagency collaboration criterion, which had been 5 points. Basically, it's a modest amount of scoring that was allocated to that criterion, not really enough to change how proposals were developed. And again, we do require, in cases where a third-party agency is needed for successful implementation of the project, we do require upfront evidence of upfront coordination with them with the application. We would propose to incorporate equity into the process under accessibility. Currently, projects receive their scoring on this factor based on whether they link designated regional activity centers as identified by the Metropolitan Washington Council of Governments, or FAMPO. So projects with an activity center on both ends receive the highest score on one end, slightly lower score. We would propose to add COG's designated equity emphasis areas to the list of kind of qualifying points. So for instance, a project bringing commuters from an equity emphasis area to an activity center could get a higher score on this factor. So kind of a simple way to reflect equity in the process using equity areas that are already designated and recognized. One thing I'll note is we did actually compare scoring results under the proposed process with the current process, looking at the last few rounds of projects. There wasn't too much difference. A few cases where projects may have moved up or down in the rankings a little bit, but no real wholesale changes. So we are looking to make these changes because, for one thing, there's a lot of interest in tangible elements of project and program performance right now. And we will be next month at the commission meeting presenting our Commuter Choice Annual Report for adoption. This year, we're doing a pretty extensive benefits look back at the impacts of our funding, encompassing a number of elements that we capture in our evaluation process and not, but looking at the environmental, economic, quality of life benefits of our funding. Removal of the collaboration criterion would streamline the process for applicants. Some we found weren't even bothering to try to get the 5 points on it. So we're interested in your feedback today. We will be briefing the full commissions, both us and PRTC, since it would apply to both commuter choice corridors, on these changes at the meetings on October 6th. We would then seek to have any changes adopted as part of opening the 395-95 call for projects in November. We did just wrap up a meeting with the Joint Commission Working Group today for the 395-95 corridor, kind of the analog to the PAC for that corridor, and outline these changes as part of reviewing the call for projects with them. So that wraps up my presentation. Along with my teammate Adam Hager, we're happy to take any questions you may have. And Mr. Chair, I think you're muted.
Mr. Chairman, I have a question.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
This is Supervisor Prost. It just dawned on me, the annualized cost effectiveness, when we're doing buses, do we net out the revenues that they generate, or are these, I don't even know, are these bus services that are provided with this money, or do they generate revenue? And if so, is it netted out when we're evaluating cost effectiveness?
It would be netted out. So we'd just be looking at the subsidy, basically. that factor is comparing the total technical merit score to the amount of funding being requested from the program, but we also kind of divide that out over the useful life of the project.
Right.
So, you know, transit station improvement that has a 40-year lifespan, you know, may fare better just because of that than a bus service that runs for 2 years.
Correct. Okay. Thank you.
Sure.
And the other
Supervisor-
question I have, Mr. Chairman, is this comes back then as recommendations to the full NVTC board. But there's no agreement in advance that this will determine the end result. I mean, it's likely to, obviously, but it's still there's discretion at the commission level to make a change if they chose to do so. Is that correct?
Yeah, this briefing is really kind of the start of the process. We would brief the full commissions in October and then seek to approve whatever process the commissions are supportive of in November.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I wasn't clear.
Oh, okay.
Once we get to the point where we apply this and it shows us what projects, how they rank, the commission then has the authority to accept or tweak that ranking, correct?
Yeah, the
Okay.
programming is ultimately at the commission's discretion.
Okay.
The technical evaluation is one element of the process, along with public comment, funding availability, and such.
Great. Okay. Looks
Thanks.
good to me.
Thank you, Supervisor Faust. Supervisor Turner?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Ben, you may have said it. I apologize if I missed it. Can you explain to me what applicant preference and diversion mitigation is?
Sure. Applicant preference, basically, as part of submitting an application, we require applicants to get the authorization from their board or council. And as part of that, we ask them to prioritize the projects. So basically a ranked order of what they see as their priorities. So whichever is the top of that list has been getting 10 points in the process, and we're proposing that it would still get points, but just 5 points instead of 10. So that's basically what that is. Diversion mitigation is looking at, it's kind of a bit of a weird factor, but kind of responding to the concern that, especially when tolling began along I-66, that it might contribute to more people, cutting through on local streets and arterials. So the idea there was to kind of reflect whether projects could soak up trips that might be priced off of the expressway or congested off of the expressway. The scoring for it is really based on what type of project it is. So transit projects that potentially could absorb a lot of people do better on that, since they might represent a lot of cars otherwise that are then traveling along 66 or parallel routes.
That's great. Thank you very much.
Sure.
Are there other questions? Now, let me clarify this. The proposal here to make the changes to the evaluation process, will that apply to 395, 95 projects and I-66 projects?
It would, yeah.
Okay. And so we have a round of 395, 95 projects this fall. When are the next I-66 projects?
So we would be looking in about a year from now to open the call for projects, basically doing an alternating years. But there always is the opportunity to adjust the process, at a later time as well, on an ongoing basis.
Okay. Do we know what toll revenue is doing on I-66 at this point?
I-66 is starting to pick back up. We are, from what we've received from VDOT so far, fiscal year 22 was, I think we received about $4 million relative to a target in the MOA of about 10 million. It's looking like 23 may actually be pretty close to the target figure in the MOA. So definitely seeing a rebound there, and we are getting a portion of the payments coming in from the outside the Beltway Express Lanes concessionaire as well. So hopefully the next round, a little over a year from now, will be in a pretty good revenue situation.
Okay, thanks.
Sure.
Do any members of the committee have any other questions on this? So again, this is an initial discussion that'll come before the commission in October. Is that right, Ben?
Yeah, we'll brief the commissions in October and seek approval in November as part of opening the 395 call for projects.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
Again, any other questions? Okay, thanks a lot. Next item is Transit Resource Center. There's an update on the Envision Route 7 BRT strategic plan. In July, the commission approved the award of a contract for consulting services to develop a funding and governance approach for the crucial investment for our Northern Virginia communities. So I'll turn it over to Xavier Harmony for an update on the work that's getting underway. Xavier?
Good afternoon, all. So thank you for allowing us this opportunity to give you an update on the Envision Route 7 project. There's a lot going on for this project, but I'll try and be relatively brief. Next slide, please. As always, I think it's good to refresh what we're talking about. We're talking about this project. So the Envision Route 7 project is a bus rapid transit project that goes from Tyson to Mark Center via East Falls Church. It's about 11 miles, and you can see the proposed alignment on this map. Next slide, please. So right now, we are still working through the mobility study. This is something we discussed at our last PAC meeting a few months ago, but something that we have just kicked off is the strategic implementation plan. This strategic implementation plan is essentially a document that's going to help guide us through the remaining phases of this project, all the way through final design, construction, and operation. Next slide, please. Okay, so more detail about this plan. So it's a complementary effort led by MPTC, but also funded by Fairfax County. That will serve as a flexible, adaptable roadmap for the commission and staff. So there are three main topics that are addressed in this project: project governance, phased implementation. So like I showed in the previous slide, there are multiple phases still remaining for this project, and this will help us figure out how to step through each of them and where there might be opportunities to perhaps get some timing or schedule efficiencies through this process. And then strategic funding decisions. When we need to apply for certain funds, what funds might be available to us, what kind of strategies do we need to implement to get this project implemented over the next few years. So as an update on the strategic implementation plan, we had our kickoff meeting with the consultant Kimberly Horn on August 30th, so just about 2 weeks ago. We just received a stakeholder engagement update from the consultant team, and so we're starting to put together, arrange the meetings and put together the stakeholder engagement, primarily with senior level staff at different jurisdictions about what we might want the project governance and strategic funding to look like. Right now, the consulting team is working on an existing and planned conditions memorandum and doing a bit of background research in what other governance and funding models we need to consider and account for through this process. Next slide, please. So as I mentioned, we're both working the mobility study and the funding, implementation plan project. So there's a lot going on over the next several months for this project. Most importantly, for the near term, we have a public meeting coming up for the mobility study. This is where we're really reintroducing the project to the public. We haven't had a public meeting for this project since about 2015, I believe. Here we're getting an update on the mobility work that's happening. Really, at this point, it's the existing conditions as well as a refresh for the public. This is what the project is about. These are the benefits. This is what we are working towards. Simultaneously, the consulting team for the mobility study is still working on traffic simulation and demand modeling as part of this project, what we call a no build, so without the BRT infrastructure implemented. And then in addition, throughout the fall, we are going to be having strategic implementation plan workshops with the jurisdictional staff leadership. So this will be happening more towards October with some more stuff towards, I think we're looking at beginning of December for that. And then we'll be updating the PAC and commission accordingly to make sure you're still informed throughout and hearing any updates. Through winter, we're starting to build the build scenarios for the traffic demand modeling and simulation. That's with BRT implemented. What does that look like? How does it impact traffic? And how does that impact bus operations? The strategic implementation plan will wrap up in February. It's only a 6-month project, so it's a quick burn. And then in the spring, we have our final public meeting for the mobility study, as well as our final stakeholder meeting for the mobility study, which is more with jurisdictional staff. So a lot coming up in the next few months, several months, I should say, rather. But it's a real, there's a lot of work happening for this project. Next slide, please. So as I mentioned, an important near-term thing is the upcoming public outreach. So there's a public meeting at Meridian High School. Some of you might know it by its former name, George Mason High School, in case you're trying to picture where it is. It's a school really adjacent to the Route 7 corridor, close to 66. The public meeting is on October 11th. Starts at 6:30 with a brief presentation held at 7 p.m. And then we'll have boards and a time for question and answer with the consulting team, as well as some MPTC staff as well. There will also be some baked goods and things as well from local shops and everything. So there is trying to create a bit of a friendly sort of like casual atmosphere so people can feel free to ask questions and learn more about the project and what's happening. We'll also be having some pop-up events over the next couple of weeks. The purpose of these pop-up events is really to help get the message out about the upcoming public outreach and remind people that this project is something that is coming. So you can see on the slide in front of you that there are 5 pop-up events planned starting this Saturday. And we're going to have consultant staff out in these different locations talking about this project and sharing information about the upcoming public meeting. After this first phase of outreach, we're going to have some more continued casual sort of informal outreach events like bus stop chats is what our consultants calling them. But this is what's coming up within the next 3 or 4 weeks. And I believe that is it. So please let me know if you have any questions.
Okay, thank you very much. I know one suggestion I have would be and I want to check in with Supervisor Faust on this, but some pop-up events in Fairfax County, I think potentially in his area. Supervisor Faust, would you like that?
Yes, I would. I mean, that would be good.
Similarly, if I could put a shout out for sort of the West End Mark Center in the Alexandria side, if there's something we can, that can be arranged for that termination point as well.
I will quickly just jump in and say the purpose of this first, I should say the mobility study, this first phase ends right now at 7 Corners. The second phase of the mobility study will hit more on Alexandria.
Understood. Okay, thank you.
Okay, Mr. Chairman.
Sure, Supervisor, go ahead.
Thank you. The public meeting at Meridian High School, is that going to be totally in person, or is there going to be a virtual element to it?
The plan is to have it in person, but there will be virtual elements. There'll be recordings and things planned as part of this as well. So materials will be available to people who won't be able to make it in person.
But they will not be able to participate in the meeting. Is that?
There is currently no plan for a simultaneous in-person and virtual part of this. The actual, the only sort of like part that could really be done virtually is the presentation, and it's only a 10-12 minute presentation. And we're not aiming to have questions during the presentation, more towards the board. So it's not really the type of meeting that really facilitates super well to a public, to a virtual meeting. That's why we're sort of have it in a more traditional public meeting style.
No, I understand. We've been working with that crowd down there around the Meridian High School for about 2 years at least. very tough crowd, and very demanding of, virtual access. I understand why this won't be, but make it clear, if you would, that, a presentation will be, accessible online, and I assume there'll be 30 days or some period of time in which people can review it and submit questions, and something that make it somewhat interactive, because there are, it's a small group, but they're aggressive. And in terms of pop-ups, well, first of all, are we going to get a flyer or something, or maybe we already have one, that we can use to advertise the meeting, and then possibly the pop-ups as well?
Yeah, so we have so the pop-up events will the consultant staff will be handing out flyers, like these little like postcard things with all the details on them. And our communications team will also have some materials they can forward to you as well. We are already planning some outreach with everyone. This is before we've actually really started the real big push to everyone else. So we have some materials already. We just got to send them to you.
Yeah, no, I mean, we need it. The Falls Church City Hall is this Saturday. I don't know whether, I mean, I would love to have something I could push out, or could have pushed out on that one.
Yeah.
And definitely the Meridian one. There's got to be something that you send us that we can include with our newsletters, and send out to our constituents. So
we'll make sure you get that soon.
Hey, Xavier, could I add something in? Just when we talk about the pop-up events, are actually going to be handing out flyers to come to the public meeting.
Yeah.
So they are very much to reach out to the community to let them know about the public meeting and know about the website. So they won't be independent presentations. And so that's part of that, is getting the word out to the community about the public meeting. Not that there's individual things happening at that public meet so those pop-up events, if that makes sense.
So there's no interaction at these pop-ups. It's just, here's a flyer, come to the meeting.
They can provide some basic questions about the project, but yeah, the primary purpose, as Kate mentioned, is really telling people about the public meeting. That's when we'll have the presentation. That's when we'll have like the boards about the project. The people at the pop-ups will be able to answer some high-level questions like, what is the project? But they won't be able to speak so much about what is happening in the current work right now.
Okay.
Sorry, I apologize I wasn't clear on that.
Well, that's fine. Okay, so the key then is, as soon as you can, get us a really good brochure, handout, whatever that we can use to get the word out on October 11th. Yeah, because there's only a certain number of people who are going to be really interested in this, and I got their email addresses. I got
No worries.
They got mine too.
Thank you very much, Supervisor Faust. Board Member Garvey.
Yeah, thank you. First, apologies for being late. And this question may just show that I was late. Could you go back one slide, please, Xavier? Okay, great. So at this meeting on the 11th at the high school, you're going to be doing a traffic simulation and demand modeling, showing if nothing happens. Basically, kind of presenting the case for doing something in some ways. Is that kind of the idea of what we're trying to do?
This is the more the existing conditions, basically what's there now. So there's sort of three phases to the modeling. There's the what's happened, like what's right now up to 2022. And actually they're using some data from like a year or two ago as well. Then they have the no build that's looking into the future, but assuming nothing is built out. And then they have build scenarios looking to the future, but then with BRT. The no build, they're going to talk a little bit about the build and no build scenarios as well, but it's going to be, that part of the conversation is going to be a little bit higher level. They don't have the analysis for that yet. And that's going to be more of the focus on the second public meeting. This one is more about reintroducing people to the project. Like I said, we haven't really done public outreach for this project for 7 years, I think it might be. So, these kinds of things fall out of people's memories. Reintroducing people to the project, and they're telling them this is what existing conditions are. This is what the traffic conditions are out right now. And they have that for both pre-pandemic as well as now, because it's very different with the traffic conditions in both time periods. So we're kind of with both. And talking about both what it is like from a traffic point of view, but also from a bus point of view. So there's a Ramada bus route 28A that runs up and down that corridor. What is the ridership like that? And talking about that as part of the existing condition. So letting people know where we are right now. And then as part of that, what are some of the things we're considering for the field scenarios that we're going to incorporate into our analysis over the coming months?
So thank you. So part of the goal in some ways is to show this is one, that we know what we're doing. I suspect that Mr. Faust, Supervisor Faust, is hearing from some difficult people. One, that we know what we're doing. This is what's going on now somewhat, and we're working on in the future and sort of setting the stage for the February, which will be another meeting like this, and will show if we do this project, this is what's going to happen. It's going to be better, presumably. And so that we're part of just kind of trying to educate people and bring them along. Is that a correct assumption?
Yeah, a little bit. And the second public meeting is more in April, but there will be other opportunities to engage and provide feedback throughout the process. There's going to be, like I said, some bus stop chats where we'll be having our consultants out in the field, talking to people and asking them what their thoughts are on different improvements and things. But the big second public meeting is more in April. And that's where we really have run all the analyses and have a couple of different options where you can really show what is the impact of traffic and what is the impact of bus operations having the BRT built versus not having it built. And there'll be a couple of different BRT options as well. So you can sort of see the impacts of like different levels of infrastructure and what is the impact on both traffic conditions as well as BRT primarily. We're also do have some stuff on pedestrian impacts and bicycle stuff. That is not the main purpose. We have accounted for there.
Okay, thank you. Well, that's helpful. And then will we be able to see that modeling? It looks like you're going to present the modeling to the commission in February, the one for build scenarios. And is there a way to go online and look at the simulation for the one in October, or watch the meeting, or?
So the February will be the strategic. It's just highlighting the strategic implementation plan wraps up. There's I think at no point I think right now we're not really planning to present anything about the modeling there, but we can give you an update on that thing, that kind of stuff at the commission meeting. We'll have the boards and the presentation from this meeting on October 11th all online, so everyone will be able to see it and be able to see all the findings and everything. And we'll update the Packing Commission as more information is available, so you're all aware what is happening in real time, so that you don't have any surprises if any constituents ask you any thorny questions.
Oh, I don't mind surprises, but I would be interested in knowing. Thank you. Yeah, no, that sounds great. So I'll be interested once the presentation is up to watch it, and then really interested in what the build scenarios are going to show. Thank you. And sorry for taking so much time. Thank you.
No, thank you very much. Any other questions?
Yeah, I do.
Go ahead, Supervisor.
First of all, not a question, but a comment. The crowd down there, you may be aware, we're Falls Church is redeveloping at the Meridian, and Fairfax County is proposing to redevelop at the Virginia Tech and Metro Center sites. There is a very active opposition to all that, and they are constantly focused on traffic analysis and studies, traffic impact analysis. I would strongly recommend, unless you want to deal with the consequences, that you make sure you coordinate with Fairfax County staff and Falls Church traffic staff regarding the information that's been provided to date. I don't know where, I'm assuming you get your data through the county. I hope you do, but if you don't, if there are inconsistencies, they will find them and they will jump on them. That's number one. Who are you working with at Fairfax County on the transportation side for this study?
I would have to double check in my email. The last person I was working with was Sean Schweitzer, who is, and I was working with Sean because Sean was just working on another project. So this project really builds on some previous work that Fairfax had done. This phase of the project is building on some work that Fairfax County had done in the northern part of the corridor. They've been doing some work to take this a little bit further. This mobility study builds on some of that, and they're doing some more geometric versions is advancements on that northern part, north of 66 from the corridor. And so Sean Schweitzer was the last person I've been working with from Fairfax County.
Okay, Rob, I don't want to seem like an alarmist, but I want you to know that you're stepping into a beehive down there. It's like I've been doing this 16 years. It's like nothing I've ever dealt with before, what we're dealing with down there.
People aren't behaving well these days, John.
What?
People are not behaving well these days, just in general. We have a few beehive stuff going on here. It's just, I think it's the general whatever. I'm sorry. Just,
I disagree with that. This is personalities, individuals that are, just unique. I got a big district and it's not happening anywhere else. So that's one thing. And then the other thing is, shoot. You got that traffic. Oh, they are going to want to know, as I have been asking for years and years, when are we going to get this project complete? So be prepared. You're not going to be talking about, you're going out to talk about where we're at. They're going to want to know where you're going and when you're going to get there. I just heads up that is going to be a big part of the feedback you get because it's a tough corridor and we're looking for some relief, and this is potentially some of that relief.
Yeah, and that strategic implementation plan, that's part of that purpose. It does make it a little more difficult to answer some of those questions on October 11th, but we will have a much better idea about our path forward and when this will be looking to be implemented once the strategic implementation plan wraps up. And like I said before, this is it's a quick plan project, only around 6 months. And so we should have some clearer answers by February or March.
Okay, thanks very much. I think the fundamental point here is, Xavier, to make sure that our data is very, very good, as you would under any circumstances, but make sure you're coordinating with the planning staffs who have the data and make sure that it's all every bit as accurate as it possibly can be. And I look forward to this reducing traffic in the area as well as better linking our region and serving underserved equity areas as well. So there are a lot of pluses, and one of them is to be able to move people throughout the corridor much more efficiently, much more environmentally friendly, and reduce traffic congestion at the same time. So I think you got the message clearly, and make sure that you're coordinating with Fairfax County Supervisor Faust's office in particular, and Supervisor Penny Gross as well, and Arlington. So
yeah, and Dahlia Polchik's on the other side of Route 7 for me. I've been working with her on all this too.
Okay. Yep. So thanks. And one other thing, to the extent that our consultants are able to identify funding, we shouldn't necessarily wait for that. So hopefully that we might actually move that ball forward more rapidly than we're thinking of at this point, if at all possible. So thanks. Any other questions from members? Okay, not hearing any. Thanks a lot for the work there. We look forward to more updates, and public communication is fundamental, as you've heard. Okay, our next item on the agenda is an update on the zero emission bus strategic plan. In June, the commission authorized staff to issue a request for proposals for the work that will aid Northern Virginia transit operators in implementing zero emission buses, associated technology, and infrastructure. We've spoken extensively at recent committee and commission meetings about the need to expand our region's zero emission bus fleets, and we'll be eager for this effort to advance. So Alan, take it away.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chair. Next slide, please. All right, so as the chair just mentioned, we did put the RFP out a couple months ago, and actually proposals are due tomorrow. So we're really, really excited about getting those proposals in. We have a team of folks within NVTC and some of our other partners out there who have some experience in the zero emission bus world who are going to be on the review panel. As part of the procurement, we had a very strong engagement from the consultant community, people that were really, really interested in working on us potentially with this plan. So stand by, and probably by November, we're ready to award it as we go through the procurement. I'll be ready to award a contract out there and then hit the ground running to get the strategic plan moving. Just so you all know, as part of that, we are planning a transit technology workshop with your jurisdictional staff and transit agency staff. We're going to be pulling them all together later on this fall to talk about zero emission bus. We have a working group that we established last year, making sure we're getting all of the really great minds and all the expertise that are in your teams across the region, getting them together to talk about what are the challenges, how do we work together. And it's really going to support the plan, the strategic goals of the plan. How do we get folks together? How do we make sure whenever we are ready to start going out there and buying lots of buses, buying lots of vehicles, leverage the economies of scale? Does that make us more competitive for different funding that's out there? And also supporting all of your staffs and their work that they're already doing to look at their transition plans. Folks are at different points in the analysis. Some are still thinking about it. Some have already bought buses. Some are testing buses already. So how do we pull all that together from a regional point of view so we all move forward towards the goals we want from the plan, but also taking into consideration that everybody's going to move at their own speed and their own pace, and that's perfectly fine. We're going to help them wherever we can to keep everybody going towards that goal. And then obviously it comes up a lot, we talked about with Route 7 as well, is finding the money for the implementation, the technical support. How do we make sure that going forward, we are able to keep supporting all of the jurisdictions and the transit agencies so they're talking to each other, making sure they have the technical expertise they need to move forward towards transition. Then how do we identify that really key funding? A lot of you probably know there's a lot of money in the recent infrastructure bill that's out there for zero emission, low emission buses. How do we as a region or individually jurisdictions take advantage of those really significant investments in that infrastructure? On top of that, I'm really excited. Next week, myself and Renetta are going to be out in Anaheim for the Zero Emission Bus Conference, and I'm going to give a presentation on this plan, actually. What are we trying to accomplish from it? Talking to a lot of different folks out there. I was lucky enough to get invited to be on a panel looking at things from a regional point of view, which is the strength of MVTC. How do we look at it beyond individual carriers? How do we kind of roll that expertise up? So we're really excited to do that next week and give that presentation, talk about the work that we've done so far and what we're planning to do. Next slide. Just to also regional fare collection, something that we haven't talked about for a bit, but it's still out there. It's still really, really important, making sure that we're able to invest in the technology we need to make sure as folks get on buses, they're paying and we're able to actually collect that revenue, a very important thing. So as part of that workshop that I mentioned with all of your teams, we're going to have one segment of it is dedicated to the zero emission bus. The other segment is dedicated to the fare collection, making sure that as we continue to implement the regional fare collection plan that you adopted back in 2021, we're still working with all the folks there. I know they're really diving deeply into now some work on back office upgrades. Basically, that's what are the technology needs behind the scenes that we never see to make sure all the systems are talking to each other, making sure your buses are talking to them, the fare boxes, the computers in the background, which what this will actually help us do is collect more data, which is always good for transit, and also provide more options for folks to be able to pay. Right now, we have Smart Trip. We have some limited mobility options with apps, growing that, getting to maybe being able to do like other industries and other cities down the road, tap your credit card, moving towards all of those types of things to continue the evolution of fare collection and how it works. We obviously will keep you all engaged as we come across different areas and when we give regular updates to the PAC and to the commission, but we are out there talking to folks across the region here in Virginia, Maryland, DC, across the country, and engaging with folks at different industry events. And with that, that's all I had for the transit technology program. Happy to answer any questions about some of the ongoing work that we have. And like I said, with the zero emission bus, we'll be seeing you probably a little bit later this year to talk about awarding a contract. So we're really excited about the work. So happy to answer any questions.
Alan, can I ask a question?
Of course, go ahead.
This is,
Sure.
thank you, Chair Snyder. I'm just kind of curious with the discussion lately on the WMATA end about fare evasion and that being a bus side issue. I'm just curious in this conversation about fare collection and strategy, is that a topic of study? Have any of the other regional bus services reported any increased challenges with fare evasion?
I'll step back a little bit to answer that. The fare evasion challenges that have been talked about a lot are region-wide. They're more severe in some places than others. Metro has put some data out there. The fare collection side, that where we're really focused on, is the actual technology, making sure that the technology works so we are collecting where we can. Now, the fare evasion does play a little bit into that, because part of making sure that system, that when you get on the bus, when you tap your card, folks that aren't tapping their card, this should be making sure that system works so they can actually track that. There is a way that drivers can track that. If they don't want to get into a confrontation about fare, they can still mark a person got on the bus, didn't pay, it's discrete, it's non-confrontational. So that technology element is important. And that's how this, it's a little bit into that bigger picture question I think that the region is going to have pretty soon about fare evasion.
Okay, thanks.
you.
Good question. Board Member Garvey?
Are we, with the whole fare question, are we still looking at the possibility of, like a monthly pass, or a year pass and things, and actually what you might have is, instead of machines checking that you have to click on, somebody comes and actually physically checks it. And if you want to feed in, put in the whole issue of fare evasion, because I'm thinking that it might, how well those systems work might vary according to the culture of where they are, I'm guessing.
So there is an opportunity with all the upgrades that are being made to expand beyond the simple tapping. There's a tapping when you get in the front door. We're looking at options to potentially on that second door on the back of the bus, put a small tap place where you can tap your card there. Gives a little more flexibility when it comes to passes like monthly, quarterly, weekly. Those passes do exist. There is an opportunity from a policy point of view to examine how can you make those easier, because you can get more people on passes. Is it going to reduce some of that fare evasion? Maybe. Is that a revenue gainer? Definitely. So there's a lot of different moving parts where this work that we've done on the technical side does start to intersect with the policy discussions that are happening at Metro, and honestly at a lot of the different transit agencies across the entire region. We want to make sure that we are collecting as much fare as we can when we're supposed to be doing that. How can we use technology to capture as much as we possibly can? And then what technological tools are there to help us deal with the challenges of fare evasion?
And is there some thought when you're looking at the fare evasion of, maybe there's some people that need to be moving around and we need them to be able to move around, but they can't afford to pay the fare. So then I don't know, it's giving them passes or something. I assume that's part of the discussion. I was just wondering.
That is part of the discussion. If you remember, I think, oh my gosh, the years blend together. I think it was in 2021 or maybe it was 2020. We did the white paper on the reduced and zero fare implementation options.
Right.
A lot of those programs have started to roll out. We've seen it with the city of Fairfax. Q is now fare free. Dash is fare free down in Alexandria. I know several different jurisdictions, I believe. I know Fairfax County has a couple of reduced programs where students ride free. So those iterations are out there where it does try to get to folks. The more you have those targeted programs to folks that really, really need it and can benefit the most from it, that hopefully can help with some of that fare evasion. I think it's one of the things that we're keeping track of. And I know Metro is also spending a lot of time looking into that as well, because there are challenges with that collection with programs. We're hoping to learn from across the industry. I think there is an opportunity within this program to do a little bit more of that research on that zero fare. What are the implications of that?
Oh, thank you. Yeah, no, it's great everybody's done so much zero fare because it gives us some good data to work from. And we're actually moving to zero fare for our students, which I'm really excited about this year. So we'll see how that goes. Thank you.
I would like to add one comment to this discussion that, Libby, were you finished?
Oh yes, I'm done. Yep.
all fare decisions are local. So one bus system's circumstances might not fit another's. And in our situation, we're a small system in a very defined community. And the fares that we were collecting pre-pandemic were only 8% of our total cost for operating the system. And we had already categorically designated all George Mason students, all high school, all middle school students free, seniors. So it was only a small subset of our daily ridership that were paying fares. And secondly, during the pandemic, we had about 25% of our pre-pandemic ridership riding the buses every day. And they were transit dependent. They didn't have any other way to get to work. And they had the kind of employment that did not allow them to work at home. So they had the kind of jobs where they had to go somewhere to clean a hotel or do whatever they had to do. So for that small group of people who were transit dependent, who were paying, they were the ones from a social equity perspective would benefit the most from us getting rid of the fares, which, as I said, was only 8%. And so for us, the other salient point was that we were on the cusp of having to invest in a new fare technology. And by going fare free, we eliminated that cost as well. And then we had the added benefit of taking the drivers out of the compliance role in addition to driving the vehicle. So for us, it worked very, very well. Something like commuter connection, I mean, the Fairfax County Connector or Metro Bus, that's a different issue. We had some fare evasion because of we had the presence of a homeless day center in the city, and a number of the people that attended to go to the homeless day shelter were fare evaders. So it just made sense. It was a 3-bird stone, or at least maybe 4. So we just got rid of it. But that was us. And as I said, other bus systems may have different variables to evaluate. All right, that's it. Thanks.
Very pertinent comment. Anybody have any other questions or comments on this item? Okay, not hearing any. We've gone through the items on our agenda. Does anyone have anything that they would want to bring up at this meeting?
Just that it's really great being able to do this virtually, which is making my life easier because this is a rough day. Thank you.
Yeah, there are a lot of rough days this time of year.
Yeah. So thank you.
Thanks a lot. Thanks for that. And thanks for all the great comments and discussion. My understanding is that staff will follow up regarding the timing of the next meeting. And again, any last call for anything else anyone wants to bring up? Okay, not hearing any. Again, thank you all so very, very much. And look forward to the next time that we'll get together. So take care.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you all.
See you, everybody.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you all. Bye.